Let me hear you say, we gon' make a new world.
We gon' make a new world.
Hear you say, we gon' make a new world. Keep going or get started. There's work that needs to be done. It's bigger than all of us, but you play a part in it. The pieces ain't great as the sum. We really done made them look dumb. Too long we've been underestimated. The sacred ground's been decimated. This ain't about the destination. Look at how far we have come. Falling in love with the journey. Breaking our hearts for it's done. Agony's the only guarantee, but there's nowhere left for us to run. This gon' find you where you at, so might as well meet it head on. Can't escape what's everywhere, whether die and be dead wrong. Don't let the fear of failure freeze you up. We learn from every attempt. If we ain't, who gon' clean it up? Nah, nobody's exempt. Might not think you have enough, but trust, you far from alone. In every corner of every region, there's people making it known. And we ain't gonna take they bullshit, and we gonna take care of our own. Bringing back magic and majesty, we, the children of blood and bone. Some things we just can't condone. Want power without the abuse. Now we in the zone, we shifting the tone. It's the light that ignited the fuse. We fighting the lies on the news. We biting way more than we chew. There's crumbs on the floor, we spill what we poured. Don't know how much more we can do. One way or another, we'll find out. Let's circle up like a timeout. This what we laugh, what we cry about. Now, if there's no further ado, let's get to work and get some rest. Ain't that our worst? Ain't that our best? Know what we worth, ain't taking less. Been tested, we know what is true. Sometimes we win when we lose. This isn't a war or a game. Connecting the past and building the future to us is one and the same. Welcome to 1 Million Experiments in the Field. I'm Damon.
I'm Kiss. And for the past few years, we have been in the lab documenting experimentations and how we create safety in a world without policing and prisons. Those conversations formed our 1 Million Experiments podcast, and then also our 1 Million Experiments film.
And we have been geeked to get out of the lab and in the field into different neighborhoods, ecosystems, communities where the work is continuing, and to figure out what has been changing, what has been evolving, and what reflections we have about creating this new world. We are touching the ground, and we are here in sacred land in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Juneteenth. It's an honor to be here. So much of the 1 Million Experiments world and project exists in the shadow and in the legacy of the 2020 Uprising, and we are here at the epicenter, right down the street from the burned down 3rd Precinct.
But there's not just burnt down remains here. What else is happening on this block, Dan?
Oh, there's so much growth, life, and love, and we are here at the soul of the Southside Festival with vendors, with community members, with organizations, and I'm excited to meet some special people, introduce y'all to some friends of ours, but I'm really geeked to get some food. I'm hungry.
Yeah, it's about that time. So let's get into it. Let's hop into the field.
Yo, this is Ron, who leads the Justice Project.
Oh, wow, we were just talking about you. Nice to meet you, Damon.
Brother. Appreciate you. We're trying to raise minimum wage for folks who locked up. But I'm like, y'all making billions of dollars off of these people. We just got rid of prison gerrymander. So when folks end up going to prison, their addresses, they're now counted as citizens of whatever county or city that they're in. When we passed that, as of August 1st, everyone whose resident was 3001 Lake Street is going to be 3001 Lake Street, meaning that they get counted as a member of their own community. I'm excited, man.
Yeah.
Minnesota's been doing a lot over the last 2 years, and I think we just take it to another level.
Absolutely.
We're now 5 years after one of the largest uprisings in human history. A flame of rebellion responding to the dehumanizing harassment, persecution, and murder of Black people across the United States, and culminating in the murder of George Floyd. We knew that if we're going to amplify the possibilities that came from this time, we needed to start on the land at the center of it all, to understand what people have grown from the ashes of unrest.
We had some good people in Minneapolis. The good folks at Relationship Evolving Possibilities, or REP, are a crew of organizers dedicated to showing up to support others. Born from crisis response in late May and early June of 2020, they facilitate the formation of local mutual aid pods and operate a hotline for neighbors in crisis. They were featured on the 1 Million Experiments podcast and film, and invited us to come screen the film as part of a block party they were helping to throw on the south side of Minneapolis, on a street at the heart of the neighborhood containing George Floyd Square, the target that, for lack of a better word, became a target, the former 3rd Precinct building, and so many other flashpoints of righteous anger and radical love.
But one thing about REP, organizers, and really community builders overall, they stay busy.
It's true. So while the REP crew was helping to run this beautiful celebration, we linked up with 2 other trusted movement builders and comrades. Renowned poet and educator Danez Smith,
and longtime organizer and Black Visions Collective co-founder Kandace Montgomery to learn more about both the moment of Uprising and what it birthed. And so I want to talk a little bit about the space that we're in. Where are we? And what does this space mean? And has that shifted through time, obviously?
I feel like I think about it like pre-uprising and then, post-uprising. And, what's happening at the 3rd Precinct is it's a battleground in terms of what will that become, and folks pushing back against, just rebuilding what was there before towards actually trying to fight for something that is going to support our community and our future. And so, that's, for me, where we're at right now.
Yeah. So we are on this block that I think was already going through gentrification in a lot of ways, this part of the South Side before 2020. I think the uprising in 2020 left us with 2 major spots of psychic energy on the South Side, both here at the former 3rd Precinct and in George Floyd Square, right? So we have these 2 locations that feel very central to how we move around the city, that are these constant reminders that we went through something, even as I think so many energies and attitudes would like to imagine that we've moved on.
When movement folks talk about uprising in Minneapolis and they weren't here, what gets omitted from that conversation? What do we need to know about that experience that doesn't always make it into how we understand it?
Maybe the double consciousness of what it meant to be both like in movement and also a citizen of this place at the same time. Yeah. There was a fierce desire both to protect and dismantle. That there was so much protest and uprising and yada yada, but there was also intense mutual aid going on. And, there were food drives, clothes drives, toy drives, everything. We couldn't buy anything in the city, right? So folks were coming in from the suburbs or going to the suburbs to bring back supplies so people could eat, so people could have groceries, so people could have water. They took over a hotel and turned it into a place for unhoused folks to be able to have a place to stay, to be able to get food and get clothes and do laundry. It was an amazing time of possibility. And so I think it's characterized often as so much destruction. The destruction was there and was necessary and beautiful. But there was also this fierce protectiveness that we had of each other and of the city at the same time. And it was this duality of like, how I love this place and I want to see it grow. How is disassemblage and repair part of that process to make this place a place I am even prouder of to live?
I think also the corporate media narrative doesn't talk about all the work that was happening before 2020. It's like, Minneapolis has had uprising since the 60s around racial justice issues, especially when it comes to the police. And so we stand on that work and the elders who have come before us, organizing that was happening. Organizations like Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, NOC, were one of the first who were like, hey, y'all, they openly talk about our city budget every single year, and you can go to those meetings. Did you know that? The work of Reclaim the Block and Black Visions is happening beforehand strategically to move money away from the police department and into, experiments, new things, new infrastructure that's led by community. And so I think that that's oftentimes what gets missed.
And I'm thinking of this notion of holding folks accountable and being prepared to do that because we've been doing the work. And I want to go back to a moment that was prominent with you. In Chicago, was a part of the Defund CPD campaign.
Right,
and in one of our internal meeting strategy sessions trainings, we pulled up a little video of you standing up on a platform and talking down, literally physically, down to the mayor and demanding he be accountable to the demands that were popularly being spread in the streets.
Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no? Will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department?
Abolition of it?
What did I say? We don't want no more police. Is that clear? We don't want people with guns toting around in our community, shooting us down. You have the answer. It is a yes or a no. It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department?
To be honest, I did not expect him to come outside.
Bad plan on his part.
That was a wild decision on his part.
Let me just go for a stroll. Use some fresh air.
Make my voice heard.
All right, be quiet, y'all. Be quiet, because it's important that we actually hear this. It's important that we hear this, because if y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. If y'all don't know, he's up for re-election election next year. And if he says no, guess what we gonna do next year?
I do not support full abolition.
All right. Hey, where's that at? Get out of here. Get out. Go home, Jacob, go home.
We kind of had considered if he comes out, we'll ask him these sets of questions. We want to get a public proclamation. That's a pretty basic and organizing tactic, in these types of moments. It's called bird dogging. Back to, what comes before this is being trained intentionally by folks who had wisdom, who had skills to be like, so when you're in a moment like this is what you do. You ask yes or no questions. And if he answers no, you shame them, period. It's a pretty basic formula. There was a moment where my comrade Alucci was asking questions and he was kind of, dodging them and stuff like that. I was like, bro, give me the mic. Give me that mic. I'm so pissed off right now. I cannot believe this man thinks he can come here in front of thousands of people and not at least pretend to be with us. I think also a lot of energy from the crowd and just trying to really push hard to the left in that moment. My East Coast potty mouth came out, as my mom has reminded me. She's like, I love that you did that, but did you have to swear so much? And I was like,
Yes,
I
please
did.
hold those in power accountable, but maybe know those 7 words.
Yeah.
Exactly. The uprising was a vessel of righteous anger, but as Danez said, it was also a space of collective care and protection. Moon Palace Books has stood on this block since 2012. In the midst of the uprising, organizers found refuge inside, washing tear gas from their eyes and recharging between the shelves, full of revolutionary and poetic texts.
Our folks at Rep linked us with Moon Palace, and they were wonderful hosts for our screening of the 1 Million Experiments film. In the back room, where many of these same audience members had sheltered years before, we hoped that sharing the story of 1 Million Experiments could help them feel the impact they had made in communities across this land and beyond. Coming out of the 2020 uprising, and this being the epicenter, so it really is an honor to be here. Organizers all over the country, right, took up the flag of defund. The language of abolition became more popular or started to come from the underground and creep up to the mainstream. And some people in good faith and some people in bad faith had the question of all right, if y'all talking about getting rid of cops and prisons, what do we replace it with? And Miriam Kaba, our collaborator, mentor, movement fairy godmother, wisely said, we don't need one institution to replace death-making institutions. We need 1 million experiments on how we create safety in our communities and in our local context. And so from that, started just cataloging on a Google Doc. That Google Doc then became an online encyclopedia, 1millionexperiments.com. And then we came in and said, hey, how about we talk to some of these projects and some of these practices and some of these experiments. And we had a podcast called 1 Million Experiments as well. But we wanted to make a more accessible, more tantalizing, a little bit more colorful and sexy invitation and celebration of movement. And that is this film, 1 Million Experiments. After the film, we hopped into convo with Danez and Rep Core member Jason, who told us about his organizing journey and the work of relationships evolving possibilities.
When I came home from prison, I was grateful to find organizing. But it was people in 2004 who said, no, I think you'll be good at it, or you know too many people. I think you'll be good at it. Because I was like, community organizing? That's the thing y'all teach? I got 15 people at the crib right now. I didn't know it was a thing. And REP just stands for Relationships Evolving Possibilities. We try to hold our relationships right.
I have this shtick on breaking down the word liberation, because I think sometimes we just use it. And I've noticed some of us what's the difference between how the liberals use the notion of liberty and what is our radical sense of liberation? I think the etymology of the word actually helps us, and PNAP exemplified this for me. So if you take the word liberty, L-I-B is the root of all of these words, and that just means freedom. And I think in the noun of liberty, it's flat, I think it's flimsy, I think it is a selfish freedom. I think it is an irresponsible freedom. It means free from responsibility to take care of others and to be a part of the whole. Freedom from being organized, freedom from being accountable, and it's also a freedom that can be given and taken away, right? But then if we take that word liberty and go to liberate is now a verb. And that word means to make free. So from just free of freedom to make free. And then when you get to liberation, put that little ION at the end, Suffix game. Now it's a noun again. And that noun means the state of making freedom. So liberation is not about an outcome. It's not about a win. It's not about an end goal. It's about being in the state of making.
Freedom is something that is passed along larger to the next generation because of the successes and failings of the generation before. Gives me hope, right? So I am not scared of failure. You know, I think something like the referendum, right? It feels like such a disappointment, and disappointment is good because it lets you know that you care. I love a disappointment.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
Yeah, I'm still alive. I still have urgency. I still want I live to be disappointed, right? And so, you know, when something like the referendum, right, you know, it's announced. I remember calling friends saying they're going to get rid of the cops. Oh my God, I can't believe this is going to happen. Then there's the disappointment of, okay, that we moved on from that moment. But the language is out there now.
And there's the reality that 44% of people voted for it.
Yeah.
Which is like bonkers.
Absolutely. The ballot initiative was basically a charter change. So the charter is like basically our city's constitution, and it outlines how we can and cannot do a set of things. In Minneapolis specifically, it has an outline that says we have to have 700 and something police officers at all times, basically. And because of the work we were doing beforehand, because of organizations like MPD 150 that had really researched and assessed, like gave a report card to the police department, they had also kind of started to point folks towards some solutions. One of which being like, we can only defund the police so far unless we get rid of this requirement within our charter. And so that can happen a couple of ways. It can be through a city council vote, which we tried originally and got shut down by the Charter Commission, which is primarily wealthy white people of Southwest Minneapolis.
The phrase Charter Commission just sounds like wealthy white people.
Yeah, and they're unelected as well, which is like even more wild. Yeah, it's like even more wild that these people who, you know, kind of rule over everything that dictates how our resources are used in the city. That failed, so we were like, the next option is to get it on the ballot. And so the first step is you have to get 20,000 signatures to get it on the ballot. We were able to get that in a couple of weeks in January and February, which in Minnesota means that we had folks outside in 0-degree weather, talking to people, getting people to come outside their house in the middle of still the height of the pandemic. And then the initiative itself was to get rid of the requirement for the Minneapolis Police Department and establish a Department of Public Safety that would include police, and it would basically create the infrastructure at the city level for other things to exist. And there was no literal space inside of the city to create something to scale that wasn't just the police. And so that was really what the initiative was. And then it was a bunch of talking to our folks and having conversations. And I think the stories that I try to pull out from that is that, you know, at first when I would go and knock on doors and I talk to, you know, the grandma who's raising her babies and she's showing me the bullet hole in her house and is like, well, what else? What's going to keep it from that? And I was like, well, the police didn't keep that from happening either. And she's like, word. What we're trying to do is create opportunities for youth programs, for folks to respond. Like, you're concerned about somebody using in their car outside of your house. Like, the police don't do anything about that. Like, we can actually create a pathway towards figuring out how do we address and support some of those concerns that have your grandbabies at risk and also has that person's life at risk, right?
Rep is an example of exactly what Kandace is talking about. Instead of reacting with force in moments of unsafety, they respond with care and relationship to support people in crisis and help them move to the next step. After all the tents and tables were put away, we caught back up to record an episode of the One of Me podcast with Rox and Jason, and they shared what this approach looks like in practice.
So our hypothesis was, if we could, you know, be a community vessel when it is crisis and not be able to, you know, we can't take on violence. We couldn't take on serious crimes, but knowing you got somebody you could talk to figure out your next steps, that's what the hypothesis was. Just be a community resource where you safe. So we were getting a lot of those calls, you know, are they walking back and forth down my block? You know, because you got to think, we had 75,000 National Guards here during George Floyd. It was the time, you know, at that moment, it was so many crises happening. We were responding to calls like people needed their medication prescription filled because the Target was flooding and burned down. So it was like you really didn't have one set call, but over time, 5 years later, I guess we would say mainly, I guess it will stay the same. For us, we lean back on our core principles. We always say, is this rooted in Black love and liberation? Is it rooted in ancestral knowledge? And what's the other principle?
Those are pretty strong.
Radical consent. Radical consent. No. Radical consent.
Yeah. That radical consent one came up right away on the very first call, right? Because the folks calling have a concern, but they're calling on people who didn't consent for us to intervene in their life. So from that very first call, we were asking that question, what happens? And I think that takes kind of that heightened crisis response, because when you riding in hot on something, you are not gaining the consent of everybody in your sphere, right? And so that radical consent one popped up right away.
Because our main motto is, we just want to love you to your next step.
At the same time that Rep was scaling up these skills and responses, the movement at large in Minneapolis was simultaneously pushing that referendum that Danez and Kandace were talking about.
Sometimes visionary community-based organizing and electoral work are framed as incompatible or in opposition to one another. But Kandace explains how both tactics and collaboration create unique opportunities for transformation. Some movement elders and mentors of ours taught us about the importance of indigenous practices of the controlled burn. And that like a lot of the wildfires that we're seeing, particularly on the West Coast, is because we've moved away from the indigenous stewarding of land, and that Native folks for centuries intentionally burned down to, one, control from the big fire, but also to allow new growth. And so I feel like that's somewhat of an ecological metaphor of what happened here. But I'm curious for y'all, especially outside of the state and outside of trying to, maneuver these cumbersome legislative processes, what has grown in this space after this clearing, after this fire?
Our capacity for possibility has grown. People's ideas that they can change the city, that they can change the world around them, I think is something that's grown out of it. I think there was, sadly, a loss of innocence for a lot of young folks, but I think the result is that there is a very active, very vocal, very informed, and very hungry for change group of young people that is alive right now. I think I'm worried about what might grow too, What will be built, and will the community have a say in what is cleared out by the fire?
Some invasive species pop up.
Some invasive species definitely pop up. Right, the fire can either let's return some of this community, or it can just be like rapid fire gentrification, So there is this question of how will the people and how will capitalism respond to this new space that has been cleared out?
I think Andrea Ritchie says this, but abolition starts with how we talk to ourselves. For me, the vision of abolition has never been, we will never hurt each other, we will never harm each other. It's what do we do in that situation is the vision of abolition for me. I think a lot of that starts with can I have compassion and grace for myself to understand why other people might make the decisions that they made, and then to extend that compassion and grace to them.
The soul of the Southside felt like what Kandace was describing: grace, commitment, and tenderness. Abolition isn't just the absence of harmful systems. It's this new type of presence that shifts what is possible.
And things have shifted. In the summer of 2025, the mayor that Kandace demanded answers from lost the endorsement of Minnesota's Democratic Party to Omar Fateh, a Somali-American Democratic Socialist. It's the first time in the party's history that an incumbent for Minneapolis mayor lost to a challenger. After years of debate, the city is moving forward on plans to turn the former police precinct building into the Minneapolis Democracy Center, a municipal facility that would make voting more accessible, but that community groups say needs more community oversight and doesn't acknowledge the grief and pain that the land holds.
And of course, as fascism has risen on a federal level, we're witnessing a doubling down and investment into militarism, surveillance, and incarceration that is putting so many of us at increased risk. What will grow on this site and in this city is uncertain. But what we know is that Jason and Rox and their people at Rep have been and will continue to be creating new possibilities in times of crisis.
We know that the people who took to the streets for George Floyd created a flame that moved millions to action and shifted our society's relationship to the abolition of policing and prisons.
And we know that when we gathered on this block on Juneteenth, marking the anniversary of the realized abolition of chattel slavery, we could see what has been rooted in the soil fertilized by the 2020 uprising. So many experiments have been born, but we need about 1 million more to care for our people and truly create the freedom we deserve. So get in the lab, wherever you are, and we'll see you back in the field soon.
Until next time,
much love to the people.
Peace.